Our session today, we'll look at two papers, the 2025 and 2024 paper. Generally, the themes are the same in all the papers that we're going to look at. So the sections where you need to understand the difference between qualitative and quantitative research. So when you're dealing with qualitative research, we're dealing with methods of inquiry to exploring human experiences and behaviors. So under each of these types of researches, there are designs that you must understand. So questions will come in you understanding what theories emerge from qualitative research. So we usually use the inductive theories, okay, which do not focus on generalizing the findings. So qualitative is a method of inquiry to exploring and understanding human experiences, their behaviors, their meanings, and individuals or groups to assign into the social phenomenon. So it emphasizes on in-depth, the context and detailed understanding. So we use the inductive theories. So quantitative research, on the other hand, is a systematic investigation that focuses on quantifying relationships, behaviors, or phenomena. It mainly relies on numeric data and statistical methods to test this. So we use the deductive theory, which includes hypothesis testing. And so you must also reflect that your first assignment, Dr. Lumbwe emphasized that all your assignments were to be aligned with what the qualitative methods. So your paper will be divided into two, the first section being qualitative and the second being quantitative. So you need to understand the distinction between the two. So the key differences are that in qualitative, you want to understand meanings, exploring experiences, where quantitative, you are measuring and testing variables. So the type of information you collecting qualitative is mainly audio, text, and visuals, whereas quantitative deals with numbers and statistics. The approach we use in qualitative is interpretive and open-ended, whereas quantitative is more structured and objective. The tools that are used in qualitative include interviews, focus groups, and observations because you want to collect information on an in-depth perspective. And quantitative uses experiments, tests, and surveys. The sample sizes for qualitative is usually small, less than 30, and must be non-random. And we use large samples, which are often random, more than 30 for quantitative researchers. And so the feature you're looking for is a qualitative, and outcomes that we use for analysis are thematic, whereas quantitative features use statistical results. Now, the research philosophies and reasoning. So, in qualitative research philosophy typically is associated with the interpretivism, which assumes in reality that reality is socially constructed and subjective, and it focuses on understanding how individuals perceive and give meanings. The qualitative philosophy, on the other hand, typically is associated with the positivism. So it emphasizes on objectivity, measurement, and the existence of a single reality that can be measured independently. So in short, the reasoning behind qualitative is what? What reasoning is behind qualitative? The inductive. Okay, are we together? I really want us to understand. Take our time where I'm fast, please. Um, Let me go back because this is a very sensitive period. I'm going to assume that you're starting from scratch. So most of you, this is time that you need to now put everything in context. So far, any questions? We're together. Okay.
Yes, we're together.
So what I'm saying is that a research philosophy simply refers to the understanding of beliefs and assumptions that will guide on how research must be conducted. So a philosophy will actually shape how the researchers will view the world, how they interpret the data, how they'll make conclusions. And there are two main philosophies in research. In your chapter 3, you need to also understand on one of the contexts which you must outline what philosophy you're using. So we have the qualitative and the quantitative. So each of these ones have assumptions. So when we are dealing with a qualitative research philosophy, we usually link this to the interpretivism. So in this philosophy, we usually assume that reality is not fixed, it is subjective. Instead, reality is socially constructed. What I'm trying to say is that people will usually create and interpret their own what realities based on the experiences, based on their culture, based on their social context. So qualitative research actually aims to understand these meanings, these perceptions, the experiences rather than to measure them. For instance, if you're a researcher, you want to explore why patients miss medical appointments. So you would rather start focusing on understanding on their personal reasons, their emotions, their social pressures, rather than just counting how many times they missed the appointments in the quantitative aspects. So these are some of the points that the quantitative research misses. So the key points under qualitative research philosophy is that reality is subjective, it varies between individuals, and researchers aim to explore and interpret these experiences. So the methods that I use here, focus groups, observations. Then we also have the quantitative research philosophy. So the quantitative research philosophy generally is associated with what is called the positivism. So this is a philosophy that assumes that there is a single objective reality that exists independent of human perception. So quantitative research here focuses on numbers, statistics, and measurable variables. It is there to test these theories and the hypothesis. So, for instance, if you want to study the impact of new medicine uh, use on controlled experiments, you will need to collect numerical data. You need to see the outcomes on the patient. You need to measure the findings that are objective and generalizable. So the key points there in quantitative is that reality is objective and independent of human feelings. And research usually focuses on measuring, testing, and predicting. So there are two types of reasoning. There's inductive reasoning and deductive reasoning. So what is inductive reasoning? What is deductive reasoning? And what is abductive reasoning? So inductive reasoning is usually used in qualitative research. It involves you building theories from specific observations. So here researchers will collect detailed information, they'll look for patterns, they'll develop a theory based on their findings. For instance, after interviewing some teachers in a classroom on the challenges, a researcher would notice a pattern of stress due to the large number of classes. Then you can develop a theory about what work stress or overload. Then deductive reasoning is used in quantitative researches where you are going to test pre-existing theories and hypotheses. So here researchers will start with a general idea, then collect that to confirm or to refute it. For instance, a researcher would want to emphasize or hypothesize the increasing study hours and how they improve performance at school in GBS 700. So you collect the data and hold whether that is true. Then we also have abductive reasoning, where you go to combine both inductive and deductive logic. So you can usually use iteration in research. So what are we saying in short? Qualitative research uses interpretivism, which focuses on understanding subjective experiences, and it uses what? Inductive reasoning. Whereas quantitative research uses a positivism, which focuses on measuring objective reality, and it uses deductive reasoning. Then abductive reasoning here, it allows for flexibility, iterative learning, and bridges the two approaches. Okay. So I'm trying to cover all questions that come in this context. So you see how 2025, 2024, and 2023 are related. All these come in there. So now we look at the research designs. Now that I've talked about what the types of approaches that are there. So you need to align which ones fall under which. So um, what are research designs? And which ones align for what researchers. So we know that research designs are simply a framework or a blueprint which guides on how study has to be conducted. This will outline the structure, the research process, starting from data collection to analysis, and to ensure that the results are valid. So I'll talk about validity. They're reliable. I'll talk about reliability later, and they're aligned with the research objectives. So in simple terms, a research design will help you to answer the question is what kind of data is needed? How will it be collected? And how will it be analyzed and interpreted? Now the school has asked you to come up with topics. So this is a time, of course, you can change them later on, but you need to come up with topics that will align very well with your research designs. Some of the topics are not qualitative in nature. Some of them are not quantitative in nature. So you need to be very careful as you submit your topics. So under quantitative research designs, the goal here is to understand what? Let's start with qualitative. Under qualitative, you want to understand the meanings, the experiences, the social processes rather than numerical data. So these designs usually are flexible, they are detailed in context, and they want you to understand and in depth. So there are uh, six types of studies that always fall under qualitative. We have case study. A case study involves an in-depth analysis of a single case, such as an individual, an organization, or community. So within its real life context. So it will help the researcher to gain a deep understanding of the context of issues. For instance, you want to study how specific rural clinic manages limited medical supplies to understand broader challenges with it. So the strength here is that to give you rich information. The limitation is that the findings may not be generalized to other settings. You're only limiting to what? Um, the rural setting. Currently, I came to the rural area here. What do you call this? Mumena. It's always down there. So you want to study this place and what happens. There's also what we call ethnography. Ethnography. It's a design where you're going to, as a researcher, immerse yourself in the cultural or social group for a period of time to observe and understand their behaviors, their traditions, their daily lives from an insider perspective. So you can live with the community, study their lifestyle, beliefs, the strengths that you have deep cultural insight. And of course, it's time consuming for you to observe all these traits. So this is still under what? Qualitative. Then there's phenomenology, which focuses on how people's experience and make sense of specific phenomenon. So here the researcher will aim to capture the essence of these human experiences. It is guided by participants themselves. For instance, if you want to investigate how survivors of natural disasters describe or interpret their experiences. So here the strength is that you're going to review emotional and psychological depth there. The limitation is that the findings are subjective and they depend on the participants' ability to express themselves. This is phenomenological. It looks or focuses on how people experience and make sense of a specific phenomenon. So this kind of research will help the researcher to capture the essence of these experiences. We also have grounded theory, which seeks to develop new theories that are grounded in the data collected rather than in testing the new ones or existing ones. So data here, analysis is simultaneously done with theories that are existing or emerging. So you want to develop a theory on how unemployment of youth in Lusaka, uh, unemployed youth in Lusaka will cope with the strategies of survival. We also have the narrative research under qualitative. The narrative research here centers on telling stories about their lives. It focuses on how individuals will construct meaning and identify them through storytelling. For instance, you are going to collect real life stories about women entrepreneurs and how they overcome gender-related challenges. So these are all quantitative research. We talked about five of them. Under qualitative research designs, we are looking at designs that we can measure, test, and establish patterns. The main types we have research design, descriptive research design, we have correlation, we have experimental, we have quasi-experimental. These are the main under quantitative. So the descriptive is there to observe and describe um, and document characteristics of a situation of a population as it naturally occurs without actually manipulating any variables. It's descriptive. You describe the average income of households in Mumena district. Correlation is where you're going to look at the relationship between two or more variables without manipulating them. So here it helps you understand whether the relationship exists and how long it has, but doesn't prove causality, the cause and the effect. For instance, whenever you hear a topic investigating whether there's a relationship between students' study time and academic performance. So in a nutshell, uh, you need to tell me um, where it falls under quickly. A quick, can you remember? Um, Tell me whether, let me just change the screen here. Qualitative or quantitative. Case study. What research philosophy are we using there? Case study. Quickly, qualitative or quantitative?
Qualitative.
Descriptive research,
Quantitative.
quantitative, phenomenological research,
Qualitative.
qualitative correlational,
Qualitative. Quantitative, sorry.
quantitative
Quantitative.
ground theory,
Qualitative.
qualitative narrative,
Qualitative as well.
Qualitative.
qualitative. And you know what each of these focuses on, all right? So you must also know at least the nature and context. So yes, you're right in all of them. Case study is qualitative, in-depth analysis of the case. For instance, you're looking at a hospital's management system. The nature is descriptive and contextual. Ethnographic is qualitative. It focuses on studying culture. Example, traditional healers practices. Here you observe and use the interpretive nature. Then phenomenological, that is qualitative. You look at the personal lived experiences. Okay. So I'll send this in the group so that you may have um, an idea not to mix them up. All right. So I hope this summary um, is clear. Then we go to the other important context, which has to do with the role of the researcher and the sampling methods. The role of the researcher and some of the sampling methods. So what are some of the sampling methods that we know of in research? So this comes from our quantitative methods. So the researcher plays an important role when it comes to studies because the researcher will define the interactions with the participants and he is the one who interprets the data and also ensures that the findings are credible. The researcher is in a position to ensure that the results are in tandem with what is on the ground. You usually find a challenge with most students wanting to manipulate the answers based on what they feel. Sometimes your hypothesis in what you think may differ from the findings that will be on the ground. So predominantly, I do research, and this is what keeps me a lot busy. So most of the students usually who pass through my hands and are able to remember this find it easy when it comes to research. So the role that the researcher has in qualitative research is that he must play an active and participatory role. So since this approach focuses on understanding people's experiences, emotions, and social realities, the researcher must engage closely with the participants to build trust and also deep insight. So the key characteristics of the researcher is that there should be active involvement. This will enable the researcher interact directly with participants through interviews, observations, and discussions. Must be able to create rapport, establishing trust, which is essential for you to get honest answers. Must have an interpretive role where your insights, your feelings, interpretations must form part of the analysis. You must be a co-creator. Okay. The process where the researcher should also reflect on how their own background may influence data collection. So these are important roles, especially in qualitative part Dr. Lum wants you to answer. So the role that a researcher has in quantitative research is that of being an objective observer. So the main goal here is to maintain neutrality and distance from participants to prevent personal biases. So key characteristics is that of objectivity. The researcher must ensure that the data is collected and analyzed using standardized procedures. You need to be separate from participants, so the interaction must be minimized so that you reduce your influence on the responses. It must be measurement focused, so the emphasis must be accurate measurement and statistical analysis. And replicability, other researchers should be able to repeat your study and get the similar results. Validity and reliability, the researcher must be impartial, must help maintain accuracy. So, what are the roles that we've talked about? Under qualitative, that the researcher must have. The researcher must have what? Um, Active participation when it comes to qualitative. You must be imbued. Sometimes the researcher must actually become incognito there. You must live the lives of the participants. If we're going to align Jesus in being a researcher, it was more of qualitative, where he was an active participant to fill in what we are feeling. Okay, must have close interactive relationship with the participants. Data collection is through interviews, observations, narratives. The influence on data is that you need to acknowledge and manage uh, this, and the goal is you want to understand meaning and experience. The quantitative researcher is an observer. You are distant from the participants. We use this through experiment and numerical data. And here the influence on data is actually minimized. You want to find information from a distance. All right. So now we look at the methods that are involved in sampling. What are some of the sampling methods that are involved? So sampling refers to what the process of selecting a portion of the population to represent the entire population. So the whole study depends largely on how the sample represents the population. So sampling methods differ. We have quantitative and qualitative. So the qualitative part is what we call the non-probability, and the quantitative is what we call the probability. So qualitative samples are not selected randomly. Instead, participants are chosen purposefully based on what their relevance. The goal here is to get rich, detailed, meaningful information. So the purposive sampling is one of the examples that is under non-probability sampling. Here you purposively select what? Respondents that have specific characteristics on purpose. You want to have experiences. So you want to select people who have experienced COVID-19. So purposively, deliberately choosing them so they will give you relevant information. Snowball, you are asking existing participants to refer to other potential participants from their network. So it is useful when data is hidden. For instance, you want to study people with rare conditions who may be introduced. So you may know this person who has this condition and this condition. Convenience, participants here are selected because they are easily accessible and willing to participate. So you're interviewing students available on campus during a research visit. And conveniently, you also be using these groups to collect data on perceptions, just send in a WhatsApp group. We also have what we call volunteer sampling, where participants um, will self-select into the study, usually responding to an open invitation of advertisement. So people here will respond to a newspaper ad to share their views in public health. Theoretical sampling is usually based on grounded theory, where participant selection evolves as data selection analysis will progress. So these are some of the types of non-probability sampling method that is involved. All right. Are we clear so far? Anyone behind? Are we following? Sorry, I need to cover quite a
Yes, we are.
because there are a number of papers that I need to cover within 2 weeks. So my schedule for um, quantitative research method was supposed to start on Sunday, on the 12th, but because of time, okay, I started this week, so we'll be ending by Friday. We'll be done with all the papers. So if you're going to look at the what I'm covering indirectly, I'm looking at the types of research which I've covered here. So as I get to go through these past papers, we should have covered almost everything, components of a research topic, how to come up with a hypothesis, and all these. Okay, so please don't think I'm delaying time. So as we get to do the revision, please remember every bit of what I'm going to talk about. All right, is that okay? So we can proceed. So I was talking about a sample size. So unlike in quantitative studies, qualitative research doesn't have fixed sample size formulas. So it depends on what we call saturation. So you have multiple choice element where you need to understand how is sample size in qualitative done using data saturation. So the point at which no new information or themes may emerge in the data. So we have research design, like phenomenological research design. Usually we are looking at 6 to 12 participants. Grounded theory, 20 to 30. Ethnographic, we are looking at one group of 30 participants over time. Case studies, you can look up to a maximum of 5 cases, 1 to 5 cases. Narrative, we are looking at 1 to 5 individuals. So this is under qualitative research design. So when you're dealing with quantitative research design, we're dealing with these that are to do with numbers. So under quantitative research design, the goal here is to obtain representative sample that will allow generalization to a larger population. So here, each member of the population should have a known equal chance of being selected. So um, simple random sampling is used when every population has an equal chance of being selected, right? Then we have systematic sampling where you pick the nth from the list, the fifth from the school register. Stratified sampling is where you divide the groups into strata based on shared characteristics like gender, age, region. We have cluster sampling. Instead of selecting individuals, you select entire groups, the clusters. They are randomly selected, especially when populations are geographically dispersed. So a good example I would give is we have 10 provinces. So from the 10 provinces, you're going to pick 5 chiefs from each, that is stratified. But if you're going to look at the 10 provinces and you're going to pick 5 provinces from which you're going to select all the chiefs, that is cluster sampling. Then there's also multi-stage sampling where you use several methods applied to multiple stages. For instance, researchers here may seek provinces, then districts, then finally you look at the villages. So sample sizes, to calculate that, you have to have a desired confidence level, the margin of error, the population size, and also complex. So we usually use the Yemen's formula to calculate, or the sample size we learned in quantitative methods. All right. So what have we said so far? Under qualitative method, we looked at the some type of sampling methods. Which sampling methods have we talked about? Number one, we purposive, which looks at deep understanding. Snowball, the hidden data or groups, convenience, easy access, volunteer, self-selection, theoretical, imaging data based on selection. Simple random, equal chance, systematic, and certified, subgroups, cluster, selecting groups, and multi-stage step by step. So these are some of the methods that we use in the type of um, sampling. All right, are we together? So a quick, can you remember? Quick, can you remember? Number one, um, a research philosophy, which research philosophy assumes that reality is socially constructed and subjective. Positivism, realism, interpretism, pragmatism. Okay, don't guess. Let me just beam it quickly. Section A is your, okay. So which
Interpretivism.
Interpretivism. Yes, that's correct. Then question number 2, which philosophy emphasizes objectivity and measurement of a single observable reality? Constructivism, positivism, realism, phenomenology. Positivism. Okay. Then number 3, explain in one sentence what inductive reasoning means in quantitative research. Inductive reasoning means what? Reasoning involving what? Building theories from specific observations or patterns. Okay. So lastly, which one type of reasoning does a researcher start with? A theory, then test it using data. Start with theory and test it using data. Which one is it?
Abductive.
Deductive, yes, correct. Okay. Then the research designs, we talked about research designs. Question number 5. In your own words, define a research design. Which research design focuses on people's lived experiences of a phenomenon? So what is a research design? Research design is a strategic plan or blueprint that guides on how a study is conducted. On which qualitative research design focuses on people's lived experiences? Phenomenological. Okay. In which research design does the researcher immerse themselves in a community to understand their cultural norms and behaviors? Which one was it?
Ethnography.
Yes, ethnography. Okay. Then number 9, grounded theory aims to generate new theories grounded in the data collected. Okay. Generate new theories in the data. Which quantitative research focuses on describing characteristics of population without establishing cause and effect? Which one?
Descriptive.
Yes, exactly. Descriptive. Okay. Descriptive. So, short one-word answer in terms, um, combined. Question number 13. What does reflexivity mean in qualitative research? Reflexivity, what does it mean? It means the researcher reflects on their background and biases. It means that the researcher reflects on how their background and their biases may influence the research. Okay, that's what it means. Number 14, in quantitative research, why must the researcher maintain objectivity and distance from participants? So the reason is that you need to avoid participants to ensure that there's validity. You avoid influencing the participants and also ensure validity. Okay, number 15. Complete the following statement. In quantitative research, subjectivity is viewed as dash, whilst in quantitative research, it is viewed as dash. What is subjectivity? Subjectivity is viewed as strength, and the other is viewed as a bias. All right, so we end here. I'll share some of the questions. You try to answer them at your own time. Okay, most of these questions are already there in the pamphlet. Those that got the pamphlet, um, find time to read through. Okay, so we share these notes and those are in the paired up group. So today we just extended our invite to those that missed out on the classes.